way that we'll run through. I don't know if you've seen, but I'll show the agenda. We'll do a little mind setting, and then I'll give you frameworks, questions, and hopefully tools and examples to help you design any other campaign or any launch that you have going on. And then we do have quite a bit of time at the end, 20, 25 minutes to discuss, make one together. If in case we don't do that, then we can go through one of the ones that we've done with Boundless. And by the way, I'm Réka, Director of Marketing at Boundless. I've been in the crypto space for 9 years, and this is my first company that has TGE'd recently in September. It was a 9-month build up, and we'll talk about that a little bit more because we did do pretty good, so, at least on my department. So we'll talk about that a little. We use that as one of the use cases. That's me. I look a little different right now. I cut my hair a couple days ago, so different. Okay, so this is what we'll do, we'll do a tiny bit of intro. I have made the slides in a way that there is some text, but it's more gonna be verbal, and some memes for your entertainment. The bulk of the presentation is about the actual work that we're doing, and these are the steps we'll be going through. This is basically the framework I work with, is we always start and focus on positioning, and then we go into building a structure for a campaign, work really hard on the messaging and making that as accurate as possible, figure out timing and our resourcing, and then we work on the strategy of participants, who can we include, when, how, etc. And then we'll get into the one. So the intro and mind setting, and the first question to all of our positioning is, how big do you want it to be? That's the first question I talk with my team with, it will define everything else that we do later. It defines how many people will be involved, how long the campaign will be, how many steps there are, how much do we build people up? Because there is a conscious effort there, and we'll talk more about this, of you have only so much mind space that you can conquer with your build up to your launch, and you have to not be greedy with it. So this is a very important question to be really clear with your whole team, is how big does this need to be? If not everything has to be that big. A rebrand is not the same as a TG moment, obviously, but some teams don't think that way. I do think it's a misuse of trust, of attention. So this is a little just insight into what we've done, and I'll give a little more about Boundless as an example, because that's my baby, but these are some of the takeaways. We've done roughly 9 months of this build-up. So I joined the team in November last year, and then our TG was September. And basically, we only started to be public with communications around Boundless and build its own presence around January. So this has been 9 months of a campaign. It can be done. They said it can be done, and it can be done. It is an awful lot of work, and if you have more time, the better. The more trust and time you have, the better. I think this is too little time, but we made it work. We did have parts of the campaign. One of the first interactive things we've done was an NFT mint. Very original, I know. And somehow it worked. I woke up one day in January or early February, and I decided the berries are going to be a thing for verifiable compute, because Boundless is a zero-knowledge infrastructure company, and that is very scary sounding. And as I was learning about what ZK is and everything, verifiable compute as a word kept coming up, and I thought that sounds good. And with all the research and all the landscape positioning work I've done, that I decided that's the space we're going to occupy. But I needed to make it sound catchy and better and approachable. And so verifiable compute and berries became a thing. We did an NFT mint for that. That was a limited one for 48 hours for the community or people that were already there at that time. This was Valentine's Day. This is February. And we had made the traffic for base for 25% of the basis traffic in our first 24 hours. That really did really well. And then later for testnet, was more mature for us because of how our marketplace and our technology was. So instead of a testnet, we did mainnet beta. And with that, we came up with something called a signal, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. It's to make it feel bigger. And I also made a typo there, sorry, it's the signal. But we did pool over 300 ETH from the audience and community for an open source good of our project, basically, as part of our mainnet efforts. And that wasn't going to be like that if I just go with what my team said we should do. It's because we made it sound bigger, and we made it bigger, and we made it bigger than us, which is going to be an important part for the later part of the presentation. Am I speaking too fast, guys? All right, perfect. Let's go. I love everyone's attention span is super fast. Let's go. Love. We did have a community sale in August on the Kaido platform. There's a lot of launchpads right now. It's making a comeback. We were one of the first 3 teams that have done this bigger public community sale. It was 18 times oversubscribed, which I forget. That's very crazy for an infrastructure project of our tenure. And then within the signal, we did have over 20 partners join and support this cause. It's for having full consensus proofs for Ethereum. Insanely nerdy. So I had to make it sound good and better somehow and have people feel involved and a part of it, which is why that campaign was really successful. And we can talk about it later and how we engineered it from just being an announcement around us being the first team to ever be able to do full consensus proofs for Ethereum, which is a very important milestone in Ethereum's roadmap, to making it something that millions participated in within the span of a few weeks. And also an important fun fact, I don't think this is bragging, when I joined and started to track zero knowledge mindshare and research around it, it was around 0.4% in the landscape of crypto Twitter and the conversations. And right now, today it's at 8%. And Zcash is happening. There's a lot of things. Aztec's gearing up for a community sale or the token sale. There's a lot of other ZK teams that are doing stuff, but I really think that we contributed heavily to that increase as well, which is beautiful, as we should. Next year is about privacy. Okay, so mind setting. I wanted to include this session, or this part of the sesh, is it's very important to, what I would love to give you guys is just how to think about it, because otherwise, no 2 launches, no 2 announcements, no 2 campaigns will be the same, even within your own project or what you're working with. And I want to give you questions that you can always ask yourself and your team and ways of thinking that will make you successful. So that's what the mind setting is about. We did talk about this a little with the signal. I could have just said, hey, announcement, we're the first team to do full consensus proofs of Ethereum. This is great. Believe it, because I say it's big. That wouldn't have done as well as us framing it in a way that this is the next step of Ethereum. We even got endorsed by the Ethereum Foundation, retweeted everything, which was a highlight of my career. And making it so that millions participate, it did come from us building a whole momentum and movement towards it and afterwards, which we'll talk about how that goes. But I want you to think about what is just an announcement and what do we want to make bigger, going back to our question of how big this needs to be and want it to be. The momentum strategy, I know this is easy to say, but whenever you're thinking of your goals and what you're building, thinking about is this all leading to the same thing? And if you imagine a person who sees what you're putting out there regularly or less regularly, do they go on that same journey with you across those months? And if they are, assuming everyone sees everything you're posting, or this ideal person sees everything you're posting, are you building the steps for them in a way to gain more trust, gain more belief, more knowledge in them, and education? It's just how to think about it. The engagement psychology, these will all have practical results, by the way, in the rest of the frameworks. You got to think about yourself in this. That's how the best way I can describe it. No matter how much psychology you learn or just analyze other people and behavior, my best advice with this is you really just need to think about, like, would I care about this if I didn't work here? Just literally keep that in mind. Like, if you saw this on the internet or just in crypto Twitter in general about another company, would you care about this? Would you interact with it? Would you share it? Would you even like it? Or would you remember this? Most of the time, the answer is no. And that's when you know you got to make it bigger and you got to keep working on it. Some announcements, some work can be smaller, and that's fine. The shared language is a notion that we'll have different parts in the strategy with. The GM and G everything is something we already have. That's like the easiest thing in your toolkit. But within the same thought process, I want you to think about how I said with verifiable compute, ZK, verifiable compute, and then verifiable compute, and abundance and boundlessness, and all these things are kind of how we've established the corner of the internet with the shared language, and the community associates all these things with it. It builds into your brand, it builds into all your messaging. So thinking about, you don't need to invent words at all, but what are things you can healthily build association on and connect your own brand and campaigns. And then these are my 3 favorite things of how to make something resonate: is beauty, brand, and comprehension. It needs to be pretty, I think, or funny, or at least something around eye-catching is what I mean with beauty. For me, it is beauty. Boundless is, if you've seen our brand, it's very airy and light and everything, which I also chose because of the contrast of how nerdy the tech is, actually. The brand, similar concept. I won't go too deep into it. And then comprehension is, especially if you're working on something, which, by the way, almost everyone in crypto, that is the more difficult to understand. And for you, even when you're onboarding to this project and start working with them, or when you're building your own thing as a founder, you get it eventually, but then others won't. So then making things easier to understand. That's it. And I brought some pics. So fun is when we had 1.5 million mints in 48 hours, which I felt like, I'm onto something, guys. Like, this is like that was the first time when I was like, team. And we were still just Riz0, and we separated later into Riz0 and Boundless. That's the parent company. I was like, guys, the bears are working, because that was here. So we had like nothing before this. And then this was a massive bump in, this is Mindshare from Kaido, by the way, if you're not familiar, and Sentiment. So this was around the mint. And obviously, like, having an NFT, like, that's such a keyword that farmers and everyone researches. You can play with that a little. You have to make it deeper, but you can play with that a little for your own sake. And this felt massive. And then we get into all the other momentum stuff. And I wanted to show you guys how messy it is initially, and how like a lot of it is just in your head. And my team had some time to get used to it, but I work in a way where a lot of things synthesize in my head first, and then it comes out into a plan at once. Like, I just give them a big document and like a presentation or something of like, this is what we're doing. But I'm like drawing, because I also do the creative direction and all the videos and whatever else, but I draw the video scene by scene. This is what it's gonna happen. And then it became this video for our registration to our sale, to the community sale. So there's like the insight to the process. If you ever find yourself in it, it's just stick to your vision, guys. Whatever you see. And then a lot of times it just starts with a nasty, nasty document. And if you are struggling or are new to making plans, I recommend putting everything down that's in your brain. What works for me best is chronological order with dates. And this is insanely messy because we have literally everything here from like an animation that I didn't do. The things that are highlighted are yet to be done. This is an old document, by the way. No alpha here. Unfortunate. Next time. Like, it has partnerships in it. It has an event that we're doing too at the same time, by the way. Presentations, everything that my team's doing, because in my brain, when you're thinking about all the public presence, this is all your public presence that people will see. So you do need to see them in one place because you're orchestrating everything at once. Getting into work, because I also time. Oof. Okay, going back, how big do you want to be? Assuming you know that. For us, let's say with the Signal campaign, I knew it has to be massive because this might be my last big moment before we get to mainnet. Because I didn't, or the token sale itself, because I already knew we were going to have a token sale. Didn't know when, didn't know how it's going to go. I knew we had that, so I knew my last big chance was to build up towards that was the Signal, or was this announcement around the consensus proofs. That's what I had from the product team. Very important, the mental jumps you want the audience to make. If you're familiar, if you're not, my example to this is I want people to think every blockchain is becoming ZK. Boundless is the best ZK provider, and we're making blockchains internet scale. These are like the 3 concepts I need to keep in mind with every single thing we're doing, every product marketing, everything, every event, every silly little video, every community campaign. That's the 3 things I'm assuming people know, because my target audience is crypto native already, so I don't need to assume I'm also assuming this, but it's very important that you know at least 3 statements there of what are the mental jumps that you expect people to make. Otherwise, you'll lose them in your funnel and in your communication. So that helps you as a connection point to your audience. Positioning, the favorite thing. Okay, I did a 3-layer deck here for us. We're kind of shorter on time than I anticipated. I do have like 40 slides, but we'll go quick. So 3 strides away, and I meant this to be very visual because I do like writing, but this means we have 3 major things to focus on when you're doing the positioning. Okay, your test. There is an announcement. Maybe your product team's great and they just hand you information of what we are developing, roughly when it's going to be ready. This is why it's good. And these are the people we can work with, assuming you have this. Rare, but you do. Then you're like, all right, we have this project that's fairly unknown. We need to position this because I know that's the next step I need to do to build my whole campaign. How do I position this campaign? And do I need to reposition the whole project? You're going to do 3 things. Landscape analysis. And what I mean by 3 strides away is you need to look at your specific niche, the closest, like your direct competitor. You need to look at your corner of the industry. So for us, for example, landscape, mostly just succinct, if you guys know that. And our corner of the industry is infra, like the roll up as a service space, kind of. And then the 3rd stride away for us is obviously like general crypto infrastructure and every chain and everything. You need to do a lot of analysis here, which I'm hoping a lot of you are on the internet, on crypto Twitter, you follow companies, you follow people who work there, so you don't need to do that much catching up. But you need to know exactly what people are doing, what they've done in the last few months, what they're planning to do, how they talk about things, what words they're using, what colors they're using. You need to like go crazy, go a little autistic. That's perfect. Your 3 value props on the product. This is where you get annoying with your team, and they won't give this to you easy usually, especially maybe if you have a founder or if you're a founder that is extremely adamant about why you're building and what you're doing, maybe then. Otherwise, you'll have to do some digging and you have to find 3 value props. And by this, I basically mean what your product does to 3 types of people: devs, larger audience, and investors, or I'm assuming there will be a token, so people who would buy this off the market. And why this needs to exist for all 3 of these people. And then the 3 rows of seats, thinking about your audience. Similarly, from your value prop, you have to figure out the whys for the audience specifically. That is a exercise that you will have to do. I put this here because of like the what? I love explaining jokes. I know it's not funny. Okay, reputation problem. Second, I'm gonna open this because you guys we're warm. The reputation problem and the solution. This is the really fun part. You've done the analysis, you've got all your information, you have a bunch of info in your head, maybe in docs, maybe written down, and you're getting to work with it. So what you need to find when you're doing the landscape research is the reputation problem within your niche. That will give you your veg. What are people sucking at about talking about a product, about their launches, about how their whole things can position publicly? You'll find it. Be critical, be a hater. Yes, and then from that, do the mental jump of the opposite. What are they doing really good? Like, what are you kind of like, oh, I should have done that. Like, I want to do that. And that will give you your veg. It's perfect. Just be a critic and a lover at the same time. That will give you your contrast as well, beautifully. Because what the mistakes they make and the good things they do, within that you'll find empty space for you that fits with everything else that you figured out based on your research. Second thing is the bigger than us. Again, the example of we could do a very technical announcement. We could do, hey, we've done this. Believe me, this is great. All the good launches, all the good positioning work that you see that feeds into messaging and everything, think about base. They're like, we're bringing the world on chain, I think, is their tagline. Doesn't sound like they're doing this for themselves. They are. They're a corporation. They're for profit. But it makes it sound like they fake you out by making it sound like they're not just doing it for themselves. They're doing it for you. They're doing it for the world. This is very important for everyone. And we're just the pioneers to help do it. We're just the guide that helps everyone else succeed in this. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. And this is, I think, one of the key things that is very overlooked is every single thing you end up doing later, which in the plan we'll talk about more when you'll see, you have to differentiate at every step. So with Boundless, for example, we're beige. Why? We're an infrastructure company. Our parent company, RiskZero, black. Black, nerdy. It is what it is. It's exactly what it is. It fits perfectly, not differentiated amongst the landscape, not differentiated anywhere, basically. It's just extremely descriptive. It's not lying to you. It's exactly what it is. Boundless, however, the name, the community strategies, the branding, the colors, the words, everything has a bit of differentiation baked in based on the formulas we just talked about. Framework. These are the questions you need to ask yourself. What is broken in your ecosystem? What becomes easy when you do succeed with your company and this project or this announcement or this launch? How does the world become a better place? And how do you position what you're announcing as a must-have, not just a nice-to-have? Just keep these in mind. These will help you as kind of like support system. All right, structure. Your campaign sequence. I'm just gonna come, sorry. Okay, these are the 3 things we're gonna talk about. And I'm gonna talk about them in depth a little bit because this is probably the most important part. Campaign sequence. What comes after what to make the magnitude and the mental jobs feasible that we had as the 2 main things to focus on. For Boundless, laying the base. When I was thinking, like, what do I have in my toolkit that will give me enough effort and enough opportunity in this next 4 months to build a ton of attention, a ton of understanding, and a ton of belonging. So the NFT thing, hell yeah, why not? Let's go. Especially because the berries, verifiable compute, I needed to meme it into existence. So the NFT was a really good opportunity to get some virality and extra sharing, etc. Plus, my secret sauce, which we'll talk about as well, making things shareable. The NFT was shareable. When you minted it, we built a website where hell yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. There we go. That's so nice. So we built our own website for minting. Very unique, doesn't take too much. We also have a really good person in our team to build everything in 5 minutes. And we prompted you to share it once you've minted it, and that becomes a viral moment, and it did. Fair point. We announced the Boundless Foundation. This was kind of unnecessary, because who cares? But I was like, it was one of those when it doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be announced. So we did that, but it did get some attraction. And then we did the Kaido thing, which was a mess and a half, but also extremely supportive. But it's part of our base strategy. And then we did a more technical ZK mining campaign. We focused heavily on China. We had like we were on a tour there all May, basically at like 4 events or something to get more into that sphere. Then feeding the people. They're so hungry for your goodness that you've decided that is gonna change the world. You have to feed them. They're so hungry. So for us at Boundless, we did our manifesto. Again, we did a website, which I'll show you later. I put a lot of images and examples of visuals at the end so we can get through the information faster. We did the manifesto. It's a website, gorgeous, beautiful, interactive. It like moves and everything, where we basically put our 10 amendments together of why we do what we do, why this even exists. And then we asked people to sign with their wallet. Easy peasy. And then guess what? We gave them an image to share at the end. And they did. Yes. Okay. The thought leadership, all angles, all accounts, team, everyone. We'll talk more about the participants. This is where this becomes interesting. We did a lot of different pillars from product marketing, super technical, white paper, everything else, down to the berries and community. We did a lot of technical blogs, important for feeding, because if you do have a Kaido where you're putting this much effort into being farmed, you might as well get good things out of it. So because of our thought leadership in community and our shared language that we've built and the insane amount of technical information we've put out there and about the product, we got really good returns with Kaido because people spoke about what we wanted them to. It was perfect. And then, the community campaigns, we did the proof of Berry, that's the NFT. And then we did proof of read, which was our white paper, which again, we made a special reader website for it where you highlighted a word or a sentence and that became a shareable image. And we asked people to do that and they did. And I think we had millions, I think 40,000 people shared and a couple 100,000 images were shared. Huge. And then proof of thought, because you prove that you can read, can you prove that you think? Which is very aligned with how annoyed we were with Kaido anyway. And we asked people, we picked the top 5 quotes that they shared with proof of read, and we asked them to create content around it, and it worked really well. And then this is them being fed. And then we did a wellness campaign, which was around our ethos and how wellness is and just creating more belonging in our community. And then the big guns, the signal, we talked about it. I'm not going to say it again. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We had these 3. We have 2 more that I didn't lay out in detail. You do have your launch after. This is your buildup. You laid the base, you fed them so much material, you bring out your big guns so they know you're here and you mean business, and then you come to your launch, and then there's the post-launch, which people forget, and please don't forget it. Going into interactive components, we did talk about this quite a bit, so I'm going to keep it short. But you got to ask yourself, this is your framework for it. What makes you, this is when you're a critic. What makes you stay? What makes you want to share anything ever? And what do you want them to feel? Like something more primal. For me, I've always been a community person. So for me, like belonging and shared understanding and inspiration is huge. So naturally, that led into the product and our campaigns. But maybe for you, it's something different. Maybe, but you need to focus on them, your audience, always. For Boundless, I said this all, so I'm just gonna, okay. Assets, fun. These are like what you would start to think. I think most people start here, and it's kind of not what you should be doing. This is not how you win. This is how you get it done, but this is not how you win. So this is just a few that you can have in your arsenal. Depends on your resourcing, your team, and your time. Framework that you do need to have as asking yourself, how do all of these assets, every single thing from the PR to the video to the meme that I'm sharing to my Telegram stickers to my technical blog, how do all relate to each other? They all have to be intentional, in my opinion. It can be silly. I'm not saying they have to be serious. It can be totally like a berry, come on. But it can be silly, but it has to be intentional. The berries are a perfect example of the contrast, by the way, and they make you feel something. And the curiosity and the confusion that leads to curiosity and then understanding, which is the path that we took. It was really, really fun to see people fully go through this. It was really, really nice. And of course, your budget and resourcing, but that is fully custom. With the assets, they all depend on how big you're doing. Like, do you even need a launch video? Kind of everything needs to be a video, but sometimes you have an image and you make AI move it a tiny bit. Like, it doesn't even need to be an anime. It just needs to be a GIF, and then it does better in the algorithm, but you don't need to pay $2K for an animator to make a 3D art. Like, you don't need to do that always. And then your contrast and the resonance you've built with all the previous things we've talked about to make it tie all together is quite important. So this is the manifesto page. This, like, you move your mouse, and this is like glass plate moves. It's really fun. Over 4 million people signed this. That's also crazy. We do have bot protection and stuff. It was very important, and that's accurate, which is mind-blowing if you ask me. Okay, next thing, the proof of thought looked like this. Nothing big, like we made this, actually Julieta made this, who's taking pictures right now. And then what you saw with the manifesto page, this kind of gives the same vibe, but this is how we launched the signal. It was a video. Everything kind of comes together, like the glass cubes, the sunrise, the light stream that is the signal. We needed to come up with the name, the signal. Like, this is so silly. It was called convergence at one point. It was called I don't know. It was not good, but the signal works. It's fine. And I already put this there. Mainnet video, the berries. Okay, at this point, it's September. We're 9 months into building community and momentum. The berries, when I thought about this video, like how you combine things is, do you know this Cynthia Erivo meme? She does this. How you combine the things is the berries are a community. Berries are proofs, but berries are the people in our community. I'm a berry. And the berries carry in the logo around the sun so that it can take its full potential and shine. Like there's just so much story that no one cares about, but it actually, your care that you put into it will make it good and hit. We made, obviously, I love making separate websites for everything. We had a separate website for the signal that had this interactive light on it. The signal had different phases where you needed to boost the signal. That's how we collected the 300 ETH. And then you proved the signal, which was the prover. That's how we onboarded our provers, which is, by the way, a couple thousand, which also no one has that. Boundless is the largest prover network and is decentralized and permissionless. No one else does that. And then you could verify the signal, which was a browser verification. But there was multiple touch points for people to interact with it. Okay, we're gonna rush through because I took so much of the speaking time. Principles and takeaways. Every asset is a servant of the narrative, not the other way around. You have to build many layers. Thinking about everything we've done before. It's all gonna be layers of conversation. Making sharing easy is really important. Making people feel something is even more important. Messaging. I made fun. I wish, you'll see. I didn't animate it because it was too complex, but I made colorful little graphs here. So messaging hierarchy, you do have the smallest thing that you really need to focus on is your core takeaways, and the mental jumps come after. And after that, you have your broad, non-technical or somewhat technical world building section under, which is the most of what you're doing. And then you add complexity on top of that, which this is how I try to visualize how everything relates to each other. And it's kind of like why it's a matrix is it's a funnel, but it's focused and it's different levels of things you're doing. And it all synthesizes in your brain, ideally. But you do have your broad and technical messaging fully differentiated, ideally. You do have your specific veg and your bigger than us kind of narrative that you need to talk about separately. And at the same time as well, you do have your education and your super simplified content as well that they need to marry, and they need to take their own space and time, but they need to be present. These all need to do. So when you're building a content calendar or the structure and the messaging later, these all need to be present, but at different times. And then you build the world, and people just say, you gotta do world building. And you're like, what? What you need to ask yourself is what we make possible. Who do we, if this is meant to be, who do we want to join? Not everyone's going to be a part of your world, and that's totally okay. Some people will just look at your world but not be a part of it. You think about them too, but you more think about who's in it and how you want people to feel. Again, terribly important. And when I decided on verifiable compute within ZK, this was a very important question. What can we own for a really long time? What is a space where we can be dominating without anyone taking our position for a long time? And what we suspect that is going to stick around as well. Timing. I'm going to drink a little. Basically, all I want to say with timing, and I might just let you read the rest, is you need to leave gaps. Don't rush it. Depends on how much time you have until something big needs to happen. People don't have that much attention for you as you might think. You might have the urge to constantly have something going on, which you could totally pull off. People do better in terms of attention and building trust for you if you leave them time to digest what you gave them before. Have silence gaps. It also gives you time to develop your next big thing much more intentionally and better. So don't be afraid to actually have gaps in your communications around momentum and different things. And do post-launch things. That's important. You have this, and it would be so much more fun if I did animated. So don't worry about the stripes. They don't make sense this way. You do need to lay the base and do some mystery, but don't overdo it. The something's coming is kind of overdone. It's not really helpful. You do have to have a step where you lay out your vision, think manifesto, think thought leadership, and start revealing what you're doing, who you are. And then you have the launch moment and then post-launch again. What kills your timing and mostly all of your efforts at once? Too much of anything. Be medium in a lot of things. You do, oh, you don't need this, I just said all of this. Okay, participants. Making people do things, very hard. So this is where I have some tools for you, because it's really hard to make people do things. Even people that work with you and are on the same mission as you, they're busy doing their own jobs. So making people do things is hard. So we have this human person framework. There is a head. You got to choose a head. Who's going to be the main representative for this launch, for the project? There needs to be a person who's the associate. Doesn't matter if it's the founder, if it's a DevRel, whatever. There needs to be a person who's the head. There needs to be people who are the core, which is your team, yourself, people who get paid to do this. There are the extensions, people who owe you favors but aren't paid to do this. These are ecosystem partners. These are the projects that build on your infrastructure. These are your early users. These are the top believers in your project. And then you have your aura, which is the light pink around it that sustains this guy, is everyone else who is slightly interested. I would just bucket them into community, but we call them aura for this. Conclusions for this. The position. Can you close the door, please? Can you close the door, please? Thank you. So your positioning, very important to start there. It is your veg. You need to assess your landscape, identify the reputation problem, find your contrast, and make your big things bigger than you. Not everything, I take that back, but the big things. Structure and timing create compound momentum, which is what you want when you're building towards something like a TGE, a product launch, something else. Every asset is the servant of the narrative. Do not forget to put 20% of your efforts to what happens after the launch and how you actually convert people, how you sustain and keep on educating. It will give you more than 80% of your long-term value and your conversion, actually. Messaging makes complexity easy. You do need to think about making things approachable, turning difficult explanation things into something that feels good and something that sticks, because feelings make things stick. Otherwise, you forget things. Think about your university studies. You don't remember 80% of that because it didn't make you feel anything. It was just textbook. Building a world is important, but not just describing the product. It's not going to make a world or anything. And every format, every PR, every single video you're doing has to maintain the consistency of your previous efforts. The participants that you have, you can rely on them, but they're not going to do your job. Depends. The head has a lot of responsibility. You can actually call upon them and give them tasks. The core that we had for the person, also, you can actually ask them to do stuff, and they must. The extensions, the arms and libs, your partners, they don't really owe you that much. You do have asks, and you can help each other, but don't rely on them too much. And your aura, the community and the larger area that is around you, you have a limited amount of social capital that you can use, so use it wisely and focus on giving to them more so you can ask them later when you actually need it. And sharing the success, because then everyone owns the success, and that is the biggest, best feeling ever. All right, we've done with the talking. Hello, Emily, which means I'm kind of on time. Nice.